One of the most common battles our parents engage in are food battles. And I just have to say up front, that's probably your least productive way to use your energy. Obviously, our children have to learn to eat well. They're going to learn best by our own model. So am I having a gallon of coffee in the morning? Or am I having something that's more nutritious myself? So I'm going to set an example, number one. Number two, I'm going to keep things in the home that are nutritious and nourishing. And number three, I may work out compromises with my children where there's, okay, let's eat 3 no thank you bites of each thing on your plate, and then we'll have the bowl of fruit. I just simply would ask, most of our children have been hungry. Prenatally, we have children who were malnourished. And postnatally, we have lots of kids who are without food. Finding ways to build trust, build connection, meet their needs, that build trust between us, that we're going to meet that need for food, is first step. And the second step is, don't have a bloodbath over food. This is not the place to exert your will. We have parents who will send the same meal 3 or 4 days in a row to our summer camp and say, until this child eats this, they don't get anything else. I'm not going to put my energy there. I want this child to know I'm going to feed you. Now you're going to need to eat something that's decent, and then we'll have something you really want. But there's not going to ever be, on my watch, a bloodbath over food. Choose your battles. That's not one that you can win and earn trust. Moderate your family's living style, moderate your family's practices, moderate what you have in the home, and make compromises with your child about what they eat at your table. Let them know you're their partner in everything. Food may be the first place to start. Many food battles that I've observed in the dozen years that I've worked exclusively with at-risk children who've come from hard places, many, if not most, of the food battles are driven over either a historical fact or over a sensory issue. Now, many of our kids' parents will say, well, he's such a picky eater. But that child may have profound sensory processing issues. They may not want anything but an applesauce texture. That could be oral defensiveness. It's tactile. I don't like to touch that. For a child who won't eat certain foods, it may be because the smell is overwhelming to them. Many of our children remember, if they can't process the sensory data, they can't deal with what's in front of them. And you have to remember that every piece of information that you process at a higher level goes through the sensory channels in the lower parts of your brain before it has any cognitive functioning. And if our kids can't get past the smell or the texture, that's not even a door that's open to figure out. So we may be punishing children for not eating things that induces reactivity or aversion in them. And in doing that, we're losing great levels of trust. I've also had children in our camp who had food identified with traumas. I think of one child who had come to us in protective custody of Child Protective Services in the foster home that was serving her and protecting her at that time, covering her at that time. And that child's foster mom had sent her a particular sandwich. And that little girl had a memory of a terrible trauma that had to do with that sandwich. And my camp buddy was trying to make her eat that sandwich. And I intervened and said, you know what? We don't do that. Now, that little girl is so reactive, she's not able to tell me the story under the gun. But when I pull her aside and say, well, what would sound good to you? It sounds really tasty. We've got some bananas, we've got some nuts, we've got some apples. What would you like the best of all? And she chose something. We took a little walk. She began to tell me the story, and it was a horrifying story. That food was associated with a particular memory for that little girl. I just simply would never choose a food battle as the battle. Here's what you need to remember. Food is about survival. Our kids need to know that all their basic needs are met. No matter what, we're there. They can trust us. They may have to compromise with us because they can't have M&Ms for breakfast. but they might have 4 M&Ms after their scrambled eggs, if that's the way that we begin to initially get that child to eat something healthy without a battle. But simply put, once a child has been hungry or once a child has had issues with food, that part of the brain remains hypervigilant about those issues for usually the lifespan. You may have seen the research with researchers that went into New York City after 5 years post 911. And they found that that region of the brain in adults that they tested, did brain imaging tests on, the amygdala that does fight, flight, or freeze, was still hyperactive in all the adults in their study 5 years post-trauma. So don't think your child's being irrational. Don't think your child's being unreasonable. Don't think they're being willful. Is there an element of that? Well, sure it is for all of us. But is that what's the driver? Very often, most often not. It is these other things that we're going to have compassion and insight about if we're going to partner with our child.